Hello and welcome to Islanders Anxiety from Lighthouse Hockey and the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Dan Saracini. Joining me on this Sunday afternoon via Zencaster is my friend Michael Leboff. And Mike, the Islanders are down 1-0 in their playoff series to the Carolina Hurricanes, but you'd be hard-pressed to find an Islanders fan who was too disappointed with their performance on Saturday evening. They played really well. Their second period in particular, which has been kind of a bugaboo for them all season. They outplayed the Hurricanes actually for large parts of that game, specifically the second period. But they just were the victim of a couple of bad bounces and are now down in the series. What's your confidence level like now with game two looming on Monday evening in Raleigh?
I think it's the same
Hmm.
that it was going into the series, which is that this is going to be the Islanders would have to cause a pretty monumental upset to win. The odds tell us that everybody uh, outside, with their predictions is telling us that we both agreed to it when we had our episode before the series with Staple. It was the same. His sentiment was the same, which is that we think that there's pretty much a middle ground between the um, calling the series a coin flip is definitely not true, and then but what the outside forces are telling us is also a little bit of an over exaggeration of the island, or an underestimation of the Islanders' chances. And I think we saw that in game one. The Islanders were, for the most part, the better team. And I think the more I've thought about it, and call me, you can say I was, if I'm wrong, you can feel free to say it. I actually don't think the Islanders played their best game either, right? Like they had, they played a good game,
Yeah.
but it wasn't Matt Barzal who having a stormer, right? It wasn't Brock Nelson having a stormer. They left some chances that, of course, some chances were left begging. Noah Dobson, I don't think was particularly good, but
You,
then
you
when you
just
went
named the three guys that I stuck out to me as being not all there. So, yes,
right,
so I'm in agreement with you for sure.
so I think that there's this weird narrative, like the Islanders shot their shot
Right.
on in game one, and maybe it's true, but I think what we saw was encouraging because it was the guys down the lineup who proved that they can handle themselves in the series, right? Like
Hmm.
Matt Martin wasn't a liability, Cal
No.
Clutterbuck wasn't a liability, Kyle McLean was perhaps their best forward,
Yeah.
Alex Romanov was maybe the best player on the entire rink, right? Like
Mhm.
I think Romanov might have been the best player in game one for both teams outside of Freddie Anderson. So Mike Riley was fine, Robert Bortuzzo was fine, Simon Holmstrom, Pierre Engvald weren't. Hudson Fasching didn't really do much either way, but it wasn't
Mhm.
like they were detriments.
Right.
Thought Anders Lee was really good. That
He
might have been
was.
his best game um, I've seen from him this entire year. So those guys were going, but the Islanders' best forwards, Barzal, Nelson. I thought Horvat was good. Like people are a little, I think, lumping him in with Nelson and Barzal
Mm.
is maybe a little unfair, but he didn't score. So it's Horvat, Nelson, Barzal didn't get on the score sheet at all.
Mm.
Um, and I think so. All these people who are calling for the Hurricanes, raising their level in game two, which is likely going to happen.
Mm.
The Islanders could also raise theirs. So if that happens, um, we could see the series go into the deep end of the pool. Remember last year we were talking about putting water in the basement of the Hurricanes, right? You wanna do that in a playoff series when you're the Islanders, you're the team that's got less talent and is the underdog. You want to make them earn every inch and feel it later in the series if it goes deep. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to be discouraged with the way the Islanders played, but at the same time, it's totally fair to think, man, if we can't beat the Hurricanes when that's how the game plays out, it's hard to envision them winning the series. But all of this is to just keep reminding yourself nobody has any idea how
Mm.
this is gonna play out. Like the Hurricanes could come out and play even worse tomorrow. That's not out of the question, right? Like the Islanders
Sure.
could lay an egg. The Simeon Varlamov could have a 43 game save shutout, or Sorokin could play. It's
Mm.
just like nobody knows. So,
Yeah.
um, but there's certainly not all that much to be angry about. Sad, yes.
Mm.
Angry, no.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And don't forget too, JG Pageau didn't even play. So I mean, that's another huge thing. And here's Wah saying that he's certainly a possibility for game two. We're going to talk a lot about game two in the second half. Reminder that we are on Patreon at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. We have a packed week over at the Patreon. So I'll get more into that later, but you're going to want to sign up patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for a ton more stuff as this playoff series continues. But yeah, you're right. I mean, my thing, and I've said this before, whenever the Islanders play these sort of big national games, is just don't embarrass yourselves. Like don't come out and lay an egg or shit yourself. We've already seen that happen, obviously, in the Stadium Series game. But the Islanders, I think, acquitted themselves pretty well. I imagined while watching the game, people complaining like, like this is not an exciting game, but this is the playoffs, man. It was 1-1 halfway through the third period. Like that's what the playoffs are all about. And for a long time, the Islanders were giving it right to the Hurricanes, which again, like you said, is something that I think a lot of people out there maybe didn't see. There was one particular sort of high profile stats person on Twitter who picked the Hurricanes in 4. And while that might still happen, that just seems to me that you're just being a dickhead. Like to me, like, you don't have to be an expert on the Islanders to be like, you know what, maybe these guys would be okay. Like that's just you looking at a bunch of numbers and being like, oh, they have the worst penalty kill. Well, they're going to like, that's you just not understanding the context and the nuances of this team that you purport to be an expert on, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, no, I thought there were a lot of good positive things here. Kyle McLean was easily their best forward. He was obviously the best. He came ready, and that's no knock on. I don't know. I guess it is a bit of a knock on some other guys. Barzell was almost like, I want to just get this out of the way. And I love Matt Barzell. We both love Matt Barzell. He did not have the rose in his mouth in this game. He looked pretty out there. I don't know if he gorged himself on barbecue the night before or something. I don't know, but like he looked all out of sorts. He did have that one great scoring chance. Casey Cizikas was working in the corner and threw it out to him, and he was in the slot, and he had Anderson sort of beat, and he just made a great save there. And then when he went back to the bench, he was really pissed at himself, and you could see Cizikas next to him being like, "Dude, just don't worry about it. Just you forget it. It's done. Just get it next time." And there was no next time. So the Hurricanes did win 3-1. I should mention. And started out terribly. A minute and a half in, Anders Lee takes a penalty. We're going to talk a lot about the refs in a little bit. Adam Pelech makes a failed clear. It's a bad bounce from Evgeny Kuznetsov, who does that goddamn Birdman thing. Dude, really? Like, after everything you've been through, you're still doing the Birdman thing? Like, what, does he know that Devon Taves doesn't play for the Islanders anymore? I don't know if he does. But that was about the worst possible start that the Islanders could have had. But then they took the game back over the course of the period, and by the end of the period, when McLean had scored off of a rebound from Lee, who I agree with you had a great game, the crowd was very quiet, very, very quiet at the end of that period, and they remained quiet throughout the entire second period, which was all Islanders. They had 13 shots, the Hurricanes 8. Again, Barzell had that great chance. Crowd is absolutely dead for 2/3 of the game, and I thought to myself, this is great. This is what you want. These guys are rabid. They're they started out hot. As soon as the Islanders started to take over the game, they got really quiet, and they've stayed quiet. Well, what happens? The third period starts. Noah Dobson has a great look, right? He hits it off the post. He has another chance because the rebound comes right to him. Anderson makes the save. And all of a sudden, the Canes get a shift that looks like the Hurricanes. They're taking their shots. They're getting it back. The Islanders aren't clearing it. They're getting a bunch of shots, and the crowd is getting into it. They're like, oh, these are our guys. This is what we're used to here. And it wasn't long after that, Stefan Nason gets a double deflection. This is, again, bad bounce. It looked to me like it hit off of Pelech and then hit off of Pulock and in. Nason gets the credit for it. Kyle Palmieri hits his post, this time on a wraparound. Wah talked about that in his presser this afternoon, how he had a great chance. Literally missed it by, if it was an inch to the left, maybe not even an inch, it goes in and it's tied. Jacob Slavin draws a penalty on Kyle Palmieri for a slash. This video has been going around, getting Zapruder filmed. Slavin doing a little bit of acting there. I thought the game was going to be over at that point, but the Islanders did a good job in killing the penalty. They went 2 for 3 on the penalty kill, which was good. But then Marty Necas seals it with an empty net goal. So Simeon Varlamov was very good. He got beat by 2 sort of fluky goals, and this is where I hear what you're saying. The Islanders played well. There's no reason to be angry at them. There's no reason to really change a whole lot. Again, we'll talk about that in the second half. What gets me is the PTSD from last year's playoff series. Yeah. And this is where I get very frustrated.
And the 2019 one.
Yep, you got it. Where just every bounce ends up going in the Hurricanes' favor. Yep. And it's like the Islanders can play great. And like you said, they have another level too that they can hit too. But man, when these bounces aren't going your way, it is incredibly frustrating when you've played really well, and just that's what happens, and it just sucks.
And it's because with the way sports work and the word regression gets thrown around
Right.
all the time, the problem is you're not guaranteed regression in at all, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not a guarantee that
Right.
uh, the Islanders will all of a sudden start to get the rub of the luck against these guys because it didn't happen last series, and it's after 2019 went against them, and
Right.
it, the this is I think the real kind of emotional wrestling match that Islanders fans are having with themselves internally is that um, you watch Adam Pelech flip a puck around the boards and it gets held in at the blue line. That's how the Islanders season ended last year against these guys.
Yeah.
Like almost to a T.
Mhm.
90 seconds into the Islanders season ends. Adam Pelech rims a puck around. Someone keeps it in at the blue line. It stays on the actual blue of the blue line. The puck comes down to Paul Stastny. Of course, a very weird goal goes
Yeah.
in. Season over. Game 1 of this series, Adam Pelech Islanders win a faceoff. Adam Pelech starts skating around, rims it around the board. It is kept in on the blue line again. Finds its way to Evgeny Kuznetsov. Weird goal. And
Yeah.
and it hit me like a ton of bricks as Pelech and he had this almost the same exact reaction. If you watch the replay of that goal, I don't recommend you do it. If you watch both of them, you'll see Pelech do this kind of like two-armed probably like, what the am I doing
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? And he does them on both plays. It was a glitch in the Islander matrix, but the Islanders, it's all glitches here, right? Like we
Right.
know that. So they respond so well from that, but then that, and also of course like the call that led to this chaos was an absolute embellishment from Brady Shea he was getting beat by Anders Lee. And if you want to say that, Lee put his arm out, so the ref's going to call it, go right ahead. I can hear that for sure. And I'm not going to just sit here and talk about the refs, but Shea dives. And I don't know if you remember, but last year, do you remember that I can't remember what game it was, but it was at home, one of the home games where Barzell got slashed on the blue line, then he
Yeah.
skated into the corner against Burns, and Burns like cross-checked him, boarded him into the boards, and Barzell got an embellishment call on that.
Yep. I
So
remember.
like, it's crazy that the super specific 1 in a million shots are rearing their heads in like similar ways again.
Mm.
With the Hurricanes getting the embellishment luck, they're getting the Adam Pelech turnover again. So that drives you nuts because you're sitting here thinking, oh, it's just a simple curse scenario here, right? Like the Islanders this is a hoodoo team against the Islanders. It's a bogey team. It's a house
Right.
of horrors. Whatever cliche you want to throw around there, go right ahead. But so I'm totally on board thinking that and people are like, oh, the refs are going to go look at that and they're going to see that Shea dove, and they're going to see that Slavin acted like he got
Yeah.
shot when Palmieri hit him, and they're going to see that Sebastian Aho dove when he was like in a wrestling match. Like, no, they're not. We thought this last series too. We're like, oh, the refs saw that Scott Mayfield got high sticked in the face, so they'll know to like be better or whatever. That's not how it works. Like this is the Islanders and the Hurricanes in the playoffs. We know that it just the bounces are probably going to go the wrong way here.
Mm-hmm.
And that adds another wrinkle to overcome. And of course, it doesn't help that those bounces oftentimes lead to penalties, and the Islanders have a terrible penalty kill. But yeah, that's like the wrestling match here, right? Like,
Right.
oh, I'm so encouraged that they played well. They showed that, oh man, the 10% chance that this model's giving up, the 20% chance that this model's giving them, the 6% chance on the fan vote, the everybody picking the Hurricanes, like all those people were sitting watching that game yesterday, being like, huh. Looks like the New York Islanders are playing pretty well. Like maybe I was wrong. But we know that this series could end in 4 because the Islanders catch a bad break in each game that ends up, giving the Hurricanes a overtime win or 1-goal win. And so as encouraging as it is that they played well, the other side of the coin is just, like you said, PTSD of we know how this can go pear-shaped totally against the good guys here. It could go pear-shaped through no fault of the Islanders.
Yeah.
So it's it's a lot to contend with after just one game. I just can't believe that they lost this game. Oh, and it's now been 4, 6, 11 playoff games
Yeah.
where the Islanders have won 2 of them, 2 of 11, and, they've all been to almost all of them have been 50-50.
Yeah.
So,
Which again gets back to, the people watching this that aren't us sort of not recognizing that and not being like, wow, this was really close. Cause I mean, again, Rod Brindamore, they were making fun of him because like he said after they got swept, in the conference finals or whatever, we were, Art Staple was saying like, he's like, well, that's not a sweep. Well, it was technically you got swept. And if the Islanders lose this series, you could be like, well, yeah, I mean, they lost, but the bounces didn't go their way. And nobody really wants to hear that stuff. But if you've watched these 11 playoff games, and we have, and you have, those of you listening to this, you'll know that the bounces, have not gone the Islanders' way. Now, how do you make the bounces go your way? I have absolutely no idea. Getting more shots would
right.
be one way, but again, the Islanders kind of did that last year.
Yeah.
I mean,
They did this that's the thing that's so crazy, right? They did the stuff that you're supposed to do to
right,
help turn the tables with the hockey gods, like, they worked
yeah,
hard,
right,
they played a clean game, they didn't, like, spend the day bickering with
right,
the officials after that, like, so
right.
what are they supposed to do?
I mean, they only took 2 penalties, right, or whatever it
Yeah.
was. I think or 3.
And
They
both
might have
were
been on.
embellished, like, it's
Yes,
crazy.
right, yeah.
Well, 3.
So
There was the Matt Martin, which again, like,
right.
100%
Oh
penalty
yeah,
that Matt Martin, but he are you kidding me? That happens once a season. Of
yeah.
course it happens, like,
It
it's just crazy.
he basically went to touch the puck. Somebody was rimming it around. He went to touch it, and it deflected off his stick and went off into the crowd. And it's like that's a bad break. Like that just happens. But they killed that one, and their first power play was terrible, and then the other two looked okay. I believe Palmieri's wraparound might have been on the power play. I'm not even sure, but again, it's hard to ask them to do more, but it didn't amount to much. We should give credit to Freddie Anderson, who made 34 saves. He looked really good. Varlamov made 23. And again, the two things that beat him were they're just bad bounces. I still have no idea how Kuznetsov's went into the net. I really just don't know. All I know is like there was a big scramble, and then all of a sudden it's in. People are going crazy, and he's doing like this sort of standing Birdman thing, and I'm just like so mad. We're 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes into the game, and I'm already just volcanically mad. And then they started to change my mind, take the game over, and I started to feel a little bit better. And then when McLean again, hardworking goal. Lee had tried make sort of took a shot at Anderson's pads, bounced off, and McLean was able to kind of jam it home. I started to feel a lot better. One other funny thing too, in terms of officiating, is I love that every time a Hurricane is against the wall with one or two Islanders near him, the crowd wants a penalty. I don't know what they want, what penalty they want to be called there, but like when they go in the corner and like if 3 seconds go by, everybody starts going, like, what do you want to have happen here? At one point, one Hurricane hit the ice because he just like tried to turn or maybe just blew a tire or whatever. They wanted to call for that too. There wasn't an Islander anywhere near him. They wanted to call, like, what do you want? And then there was another point where they showed Rod Brindamore yelling at the refs. Like, I don't know what, I think they had just come off the power play too. And
Yeah,
Brindamore was just giving it to one of the refs. And I'm like, bro, what is your problem? Like, I don't understand. The way they play. And again, we're not saying the Hurricanes are a bad team. Obviously they finished, 17 points ahead of the Islanders. They're very, very good. And, should be the massive favorite to win this series. But the way they play is the exact opposite of how the Islanders have conducted themselves throughout this entire era, from Trotz to Lane Lambert now to Patrick Waugh. Like you have not seen an Islanders coach. I've never seen an Islanders coach act this way. I mean, even Laviolette, Capuano, Sterling, Arbor, you never saw them do this much sort of like politicking to get more more penalties and power plays. And that's when the Islanders had a good power play. Like it's so antithetical to the Islanders' way of playing that it just drives me absolutely bonkers. And then you throw on top of that, like you just said, like we've been talking about, the bounce is not going your way, and the fact that you played a damn good game and walked out with essentially a 2-1 loss, basically, is what it comes down
yeah,
to. So, yeah, it's I guess encouraging but frustrating is probably the
yeah,
way that I probably
yeah.
sum up that game.
I think so. It there was no point in that game where I was, like, mad at anybody on the Islanders,
Right.
which is the first time perhaps all season.
Yeah.
Like there were a couple of times where players like just made simple mistakes, like overskating a puck
Yeah.
or pucks bounced over their stick. But like it wasn't because they were out of sorts. It was just because they weren't. It was tough sledding. Like it was real. I think Anders Lee said it. Like you got to muck it up against
Yeah.
the Hurricanes, and when you're mucking it up like that, like the
Mm.
weird bounces will happen. And but yeah, I thought it was the type of game that you look at and you say, "Ah, man, if only like I can feel confident that they'll come out Monday night and play the exact way,
Yeah.
I'd feel pretty good." But is there any guarantee that that happens? Is there any guarantee that more bounces just don't go against the Islanders? Of course not. Like this
Right.
is sports, right? So,
Yeah.
and you're already down 1-0 in a series where you were a big underdog. Of course, you win Monday night and everything changes.
Mm.
I heard a lot of people say, well, Monday is a must-win game now for the Islanders, which is true, but it's also a must-win game for the Hurricanes. Like they've got to hold serve here, and if the Islanders win after two strong performances like that, and then they're going home with a split, like there is some pressure on the Hurricanes. And um, I also wanted to note like the Islanders did a really good job shutting down that top line. And I wonder if this is why Barzal, Horvat, Nelson, like, weren't so,
Sharp. Yeah.
noticeable was
Yeah.
because the top 6 for both teams was just quiet, right?
Yeah.
Aho, um,
Yeah. Sveshnikov.
Gensel,
Yeah. Gensel.
Svechnikov had that one play which, if he scored on that, I was gonna flip out, but it was you just tip your cap where he, like,
Yeah.
beat Polak, but Varlamov made the save. Um,
Gensel was very quiet. He only had really
yeah,
one scoring chance, if I remember
yes.
off the top of my head. Yeah.
Um
So
like Burns,
yeah.
like there was really very little noise from either side's top 6, so it
Right.
turns into a game between the depth players, and the Hurricanes get it, and that's just going to happen. And I don't want to get too far in my ahead of myself in any regard here, but it's just so frustrating because in the back of your mind how annoying this team is, and how annoying it is to watch them catch all these breaks.
Yeah.
And then you think about, well, if they beat us, likely they play the Rangers in round 2,
Yeah.
and they'll have used up all their luck
Mm.
against us so that the Rangers will get every bounce, and then you gotta turn around and root for the Hurricanes. So this is the curse of being an Islander fan, is that these thoughts are in my head already as the Islanders are catching bad break after bad break in game 1. I'm like, "Oh, well, good. By the time the Hurricanes regression comes, it'll come against the team that has never felt negative regression in its entire history, and this is just setting up dandy."
Yeah.
And then you obviously got to chase those thoughts out of your head and just realize you got to just try to win game 2 and not think like that, like an absolute lunatic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I thought everything that I wanted to see out of the Islanders I saw except for a win. And
Mm.
you know what's funny about the Freddie Anderson stuff is he was obviously really good, made some big saves. He looked so shaky in those first 10 minutes or
You
so.
just
Like,
took the words right out of my mouth. That was what I was going to bring up. Yeah, the first couple of minutes, he did not look like he was really fully in the game.
yeah.
100%.
And honestly, neither did Varlamov. Like, there was a couple of times where Varlamov was, like, looking behind him and too in the beginning, and I was like, "What's" like, these goalies are kind of looking jittery. The goal that McLean scored squeaked through him. It was, like, the
Right.
3rd or 4th time in the period already that he looked behind him. But yeah, so I don't know. Like, I feel like the Islanders go even with Freddie playing like that, um, the Islanders still have a pretty distinct edge in goal. And the other thing I was thinking about too that kind of makes me think this was just game 11. That was just game 11 of this continuous hell series against them. Was that if you remember last year, they played Ronta, I think the first 5 games, and then they went to Freddie
Mm.
in game 6,
I think
and
he was
everyone's like,
hurt, right? Wasn't Anderson hurt at the
yeah, he
beginning?
was,
Yeah.
yeah, they went to Anderson in game 6, and everyone was like, "Ooh, why is Brendan Moore doing that? I don't know if that's smart, whatever." Freddie gave up a pretty bad goal to Clutterbuck early in game 6, and then was just lights out
Right.
in the rest of the game. He gave it up in midway through the first period about, and then didn't give up another goal. So it was an absolute carbon copy. Like, you could have taken this game, just all you needed to do was whack Scott Mayfield in the face, and you could have taken this game and put it into that other series. So it's yeah, it's that's so frustrating, and like you said, nobody wants to hear it, right? Other Islander fans, you can have this conversation with other Islander fans because they know that, yeah, this is how the last year's series played out. But you could, if you wanted to talk to someone who's a Bruins fan or a Lightning fan, be like, "Oh God, man, like you don't understand. These guys are getting every break." You're like, "I just win a game." Like, and it's
Yeah.
true. Like it does. It sounds like bickering on the outside, but when you're watching it and you're going through it, and I'm sure that like Brendan Burke and Butch Goring and Thomas Hickey and will I'm sure they'll bring it up in game two that they just didn't get any of the breaks and haven't against this team. But off the island, it's just not going to register with anyone.
No.
But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Islanders actually catch a couple bounces. That would be very helpful. But I dare say I don't expect it. I
Yeah.
really don't.
I mean, why would we? Like,
Yeah.
we have yet to see it, but yeah, it is frustrating. And again, yeah, nobody really wants to hear it. Nobody want to see the, you're not going to get a ton of sympathy for Jacob Slavin's, diving or bad bounces here or there, especially ones that cost a game. But that's the truth. And again, like I'm with you. Like I watched it and I wasn't too mad about anybody. Barzell was getting on my nerves because like I just kind of wanted more, but like you said, maybe he was just being shadowed, and he was obviously very frustrated with his performance as well. So I would expect him to be better in game two. We're gonna take a break right now. We're gonna come back, talk all about game two, talk about a couple other things, and we'll see where we're feeling after all that. Okay, so meet us on the other side. Thanks. And now a word from our sponsors. First is VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, mugs, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey also carries our Al Arbor and The Island merch, and our portion of the sales always go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. Use the code ANXIETY20 to save 20% off an order of 2 items. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a 2022 Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly. Game two between the Islanders and Hurricanes is Monday night at 7:30 from Raleigh. Somebody asked this to Patrick Waugh in the post practice presser today, and I'll ask you as well. Neither of us are coaches or GMs or players, but are there any adjustments that you think they should make before game two? His answer was no. I don't think we need to adjust anything, and I think he's right. But is there anything that you think you would do differently this in game two than game one?
No, I agree with him. And I do think that this is the one part of the series that we don't there is a little bit of a I guess hope in the unknown is that they have Patrick Waugh behind the bench here.
Hmm.
Like they lost game 1 in game 2 last year against the Hurricanes. They probably should have won at least one of those games, got back to UBS with a split and didn't. But and that was with Lane Lambert, who we know now just wasn't a good fit to be the head coach of this team. Now they got this guy that everyone seems to believe in. So I do think that's the one thing here that
Mhm.
that when Patrick Waugh comes into the dressing room and says, "Guys, you played great. You lost. It's whatever." Uh, midnight, you get the midnight rule. You can be sad until midnight, and then you got to wake up tomorrow and it's gone. It's all about game two, and I think it means a little bit more coming from him uh, than uh, than Lane Lambert. So, and I do think that the adjustments that Patrick Waugh will make probably will be a little bit more sharp than the ones that Lane Lambert didn't make ever in his tenure as an Islander coach, right? Like, so uh, that's exciting at least in that you can believe in that a little bit as
Mhm.
well. So I did like that Rod Brendamore was asked before game one if the Islanders are if he's noticed like substantial changes in the way the Islanders are playing, and he's like, I don't want to get into it because he didn't want. I don't think he wanted to crush Lambert, but he's like, yeah, I do, big ones.
Yeah, that's probably true too. Yeah, it's funny too. I want to mention this. Well, first of all, the big change would be a welcome one. I think if Pajot is healthy, and it certainly sounded like Waugh was leaning towards playing him in game two, he's going to play. We forgot to mention, by the way, that Simon Holmstrom was actually the fourth line center in game one, with McLean being moved up, rightfully so, because he's played so well. So if Pajot comes back, he goes back to the third line. McLean goes back to his normal spot on the fourth line with Clutterbuck and Martin, and that's an adjustment worth making for sure. But in terms of tactics, I don't know what else they can really do other than maybe kind of kicking things up a notch and just playing doing what they did in game one, just maybe with a little bit more intensity. But it was funny though. I did notice that Waz's demeanor in the both the post game and practice presser here was a little bit more subdued than normal. He seems to be really thinking kind of a little bit more. I don't know what the word would be, but like he's a little bit less effervescent, a little bit less kind of fun, jokey, and more quiet. He's not at Lane Lambert low talker levels yet, but he's definitely kind of adjusted his demeanor a little bit in these post game things to, I guess, balance out this importance and significance of these games. But yeah, I mean, he didn't sound like he was going to make a whole lot of changes, and I don't think he should, because there's not a lot for them to do. It's going to be a daunting task. Like, there's nothing worse than, like, playing really good, losing, and then having to do it again. And so, that's where it's going to be rough. Now, can the Islanders do that? Sure. And like you said, if they get a split here and you come back to UBS Arena tied at 1, that should, in theory, be an advantage for the Islanders. Now, as we've seen, that has not been the case in games against the Hurricanes, either at UBS Arena or Barclays Center, where they lost on bad balances as well. Where, again, I'm remembering the Devon Taves goal that was called back because he kicked it in.
I know.
Yeah. So I don't know about that, but regardless, they really should. I mean, they're going to try and get this split, and it's a huge, huge deal if they get it. If they don't, I don't think the series is over. I don't think it's the end of the world. It's obviously a huge, hole to climb out of. And if they can win, the 2 games at US Arena, then again, things change. But this is, again, where it gets frustrating, because they played so well that I don't really know, what else they can do other than just kind of press the gas a little bit harder and try and do exactly what they did do, just more, with more intensity and for longer. Because like you said, there were times when, they kind of gave in and were a little bit, maybe not quite as sharp, but we're in the playoffs now. You got to get this going. So I mean, I don't know what else for game 2 here. Is there anything that's kind of concerning in your mind? I mean, other than just laying an egg, I guess. Is there anything that's kind of like worrying you, or maybe the opposite, maybe making you feel better going into game 2 on Monday night?
No, it's almost like another game 1, right? Like, it almost feels that way to
Yeah.
me. It really does, because, like, the Hurricanes were a big favorite to win game 1. They won game 1. They held serve.
Hmm.
So the Islanders, I really wanted to win Saturday night. I especially wanted to win when they were playing well. But now it's just, you gotta just find a way to win game 2. Um, I don't and I don't think that outside of the hockey gods, like, there's much that's scaring me here. And I would actually say, like, the Hurricanes would probably need to adjust more than the Islanders, right? Like, which is crazy to say after the
Right.
team won. Um, the good news is, like, Pajot coming back, I think is a pretty big deal, because it gives you a lot more flexibility in that bottom 6. You could play him in between Clutterbuck and Martin, and put McLean with Lee. I mean, I don't know who you take out of the lineup. I think that Fashing, Holmstrom, or Engvall, if Wad decided to take any of them out,
Hmm.
I'd be fine with it. I do wonder if he leaves Engvall in because Lee, Pajot, and Engvall were going so well, and obviously that line scored yesterday. And then you can decide between Holmstrom and Fashing who you'd rather play with Nelson and Palmieri.
Hmm.
But I that's the thing here. Like, I think people are kind of just talking and focusing on the fact that there's room for the Hurricanes to improve here, whereas there's actually, just as much room for the Islanders to improve as well. Um, and I wonder if we've seen their best goaltending performance of the series too. So yeah, I don't expect Freddie Anderson's been outrageously good since he's come back from his blood clot. I think he's got like a 950, and then he puts up 34 saves and 34 shots yesterday, so that save percentage only goes up. That's the thing, and I hate that I'm focusing on this part, but I'm like, "Oh, yeah, he's gonna regress. Oh, he'll regress just in time for round 2 when the Rangers come to town," right? That's it's so
Yeah.
fucking annoying. I hate this existence, but, hopefully he comes down. And the other thing I wanna note too is that, I think Sorokin is such a good ace in the hole.
Right. Yeah.
You
We haven't
you
talked
think
about this at all. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
true.
you think about I don't think he'll play game 2, but I think if the Islanders lose game 2, you gotta play him in game 3, regardless. I don't even if Varley stands on his head, I guess maybe then you can think
Mm,
about it. But, that is just it could be a series changer. We saw it with the Penguins, right? The
yeah.
Sorokin wins game 1, Penguins win the next 2 against Varlamov, Sorokin comes in game 3, and the Islanders take that series in basically because of him and that game 5 performance. So, uh, if we can find a way that's, I think, just something to keep in the back of your mind as well. But yeah, there's not much that they have to adjust. Like, it's so frustrating to think this way, but it's just they just need to kind of repeat that performance and get better showings from their best players, and
Mm,
hopefully they do. And I do want to say, like, you'd imagine that Matt Barzell and Brock Nelson and Bo Horvat and Noah Dobson all know that I've got to be a lot better,
yeah.
or at least in Horvat's case, I just got to produce more
Yeah.
than I did on Saturday. So yeah, hopefully the Islanders are able to do it, and they're about the same odds that they were for game 1, which I'm a little surprised that. I thought people would be a little more encouraged and you'd see the odds tighten a bit for game 2, but who knows? Maybe people just the market's just so high on the Hurricanes that I guess
Yeah.
it makes a little bit of sense. And people think that they that was their worst game of the series, so maybe they're betting into that. But if you had told me the Islanders would lose game 1, score 1 goal, and go into game 2, and tell me that I'm not all that horrified, I think I'd be like, "Oh, what did, like, 6 Hurricanes get hurt or something?" I don't, but
Yeah.
yeah, this is weird.
Yeah, definitely weird. Yeah, Nelson is another guy too. I think could have had a better game. Like he actually literally whiffed on I think two shots. Well, a couple of them were off his back foot, as Butch noted, but didn't really have the strongest game. And Dobson, I kind of have a little bit of leeway on. Obviously, he had missed a couple of games the last few games of regular season, so he's kind of getting his legs under him again. But yeah, Horvat was kind of funny because I thought he had an okay game, but yeah, like you said, he didn't really produce much and hasn't been. He actually kind of slowed down a lot towards the end of the regular season. So they all know this. They're not stupid. They get it, and we'll have to see where it goes. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully they can. If they win the game and changes everything, that's fine. My thing with goalie changes. Let me start that again. My thing with goalie changes, even like you said, let's say they do lose and they go to Sorokin, even though maybe Varlamov wasn't the reason that they lost. I mean, you talk about PTSD. This isn't even my team, but whenever a team changes goalies in the playoffs, I immediately think of the Flyers in the '97 finals. I mean, it was Garth Snow before he was a GM. They swapped out, and Ron Hextall wasn't doing it. They brought in Snow, he wasn't doing it, and then before you know it, they got swept. So like I'm always very, very nervous of that. And if Varlamov is fantastic and they lose 1-0 and he makes 50 saves, it's definitely not his fault. You guys stick with him. But if he's mediocre or maybe he doesn't look that good, then yeah, I guess having Sorokin there is it's kind of a wild card. And then obviously that may play games with the Hurricanes heads too. So you never know. But it's hard to predict. This is a very I think if anything, if there's a big takeaway from this, I think what you're saying and what we've been talking about for the last almost 40 minutes is that this is a much harder series to predict than people are making it out to be. Like they're just looking at the Islanders standings and points and goal differential, and I get all that, and they're saying, well, these guys are going to get cooked, but like we know this better. Like the reason this season has been so frustrating is because we've expected more of these guys, and like games like yesterday show that they could produce more, they could be more. It's just they lost on a couple of bad bounces. So, this is a pretty tough. We can't sit here and be like, yeah, they're going to do this, that, the other thing because we don't know. You never know. Could, like you said before, it could be anything. So we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm as you said it on Twitter the other day. Like, the nice thing here is I think that the entire world is kind of catching on that nobody needs to read these predictions anymore and anything like that. It's only fun after the fact. So, yeah, I don't think that the Islanders are that they of course are massive underdogs and they're now bigger underdogs. But I don't think that anybody's walking away from game 1 being like these guys can't play with the Hurricanes.
Bye.
They're just gotta a lot more things have to go right for them
Yeah.
than Carolina to win, and a lot of things just went right for Carolina
Mm.
in game 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that was
A lot of
Man,
these are the same people that have picked the Hurricanes to win the Stanley Cup for like 6 years in a row, and
yeah,
they have not.
yeah.
So there
Well,
you
the
go.
Hurricanes are one of what 3 teams where we know who their assistant GM is because he gets talked about like he's like a Mother Teresa or
Yeah,
something.
he's the next in line. The
Yeah, he's
next
been the
big.
next in
Yeah,
line
yeah.
for about 8 or 9 years now, and
Right.
I love that it's not like Don Waddell gets no credit for building this team,
Right.
right? Like you never hear that. Like he's like Don Waddell is like one of those old figurehead kings of England where he just the picture of him is just like sitting in his room
Yeah.
chomping away on turkey legs or something,
Yeah.
and his underlings are the ones who are calling all the shots.
Mm.
It's like,
The real the real Don Waddell died 3 years ago, and they
yeah,
just it's like just have an impersonator pretend to be Don Waddell on phone calls and stuff like that. But yeah, it is pretty funny that he doesn't get a whole lot of credit. You know, he's the actual GM, but
well, I mean, it's kind of like how Kyle Dubas gets all the credit for building the Toronto Maple Leafs
yeah,
core
right.
when he drafted none of them.
That's true. I was going to say, again, you read my mind. You know what made me feel a lot better about the Islanders losing last night was the Leafs lost too in a
Yeah.
much more embarrassing fashion, I must say. So that is always going to make me feel better. So it's funny while you're looking ahead to, oh my God, the Hurricanes are going to play the Rangers and I don't know what to do. My feeling is, well, as long as the Leafs lose, I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, it was nice. And I actually I want to talk about that. The I was went out to dinner right after the Islander game with Emily because it's my birthday on next Saturday, so game 4. But so we went out to dinner and I was just kind of tracking the score every once in a while at dinner about the Leafs and came home and I texted my friends. It was 4-1 Leafs at that point. I texted my 2 friends, one of whom is a Bruins fan, but not um someone who would tell me if the Bruins
Mm.
were lucky, and then another one who's just a Capitals fan, and I was like, "Is this scoreline fair?" And they're both like, "Yeah." And then right after the game, I saw a couple like Jay Rosehill was like 5-1. That
Mm.
scoreline looks ugly, but the Leafs really pushed around the Bruins and showed they're not like chicken shit this year. And then I think Justin Bourne afterwards was like, I think we kind of got goalied a little bit. Like you lost 5-1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those where the third period was like all Leafs shots basically, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it
Bruins,
skewed everything. Oh, it was
yeah,
so good. Yeah, that did help a little bit here.
mm,
And of course, we're recording this a couple hours before the Capitals play the Rangers, and
yeah,
be that would be nice too.
yeah,
I hate thinking that you deserve things
mm,
because as we've learned, and I'm talking about just as like a fan,
yeah,
as we've learned this season,
yeah. That's not how it works.
yeah, it's just not how it works at all. And as we've learned, being the unwashed stepchild of the other team in New York, that's just not how it works.
Mm,
But I'm man, if the Islanders ever deserve just like a little bit of an opportunity to laugh a little bit and take a deep breath, it would be provided by a Capitals game 1 win here at
yeah,
the Garden in
yeah.
front of Liam Neeson and whoever else.
No offense to the Washington Capitals organization, but that's a tall order. Like I'm not putting a ton of faith in the Caps right now, and I don't think a lot of people are either. So, but we'll see. As I was telling my wife and daughter this, we actually went out for ice cream yesterday after the game, and I was like, you never know, it's hockey. And I was like, a few years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, the Caps were in a huge, they were a huge favorite against the Montreal Canadiens, and a goalie named Yaro Halak, who eventually would play for the Islanders, just straight up stole that series right out from underneath them. And it was like they're still baffled as to what the hell happened. So you never know. All it takes is one goalie to get hot, and before you know it, it's a series. So we'll have to see what happens. Real quick before we move on to our final topic, I just want to shout out Isle Stottle on Twitter. He's a very positive Islanders fan. We've heard him on other podcasts and stuff, and he laid down an enormous bet on the Islanders possibly going to the Stanley Cup final, winning the Eastern Conference. And part of it was he wanted me to change my Twitter handle to culture of winning from culture of losing. I said it's a done deal, but I reserve the right to change it back. He was like, nope, it's got to be permanent. And I was like, you know what? I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Every time the Islanders make the playoffs, somebody asked me this, like, oh, you're going to change your name if they win? And I have not had to change my name yet. So we'll see what happens. My mind is open. If they force my hand and make me change my title, by my Twitter handle by winning the Stanley Cup, well, then so be it.
Yeah,
But we'll see what
maybe
happens.
that's what the hockey guys have been waiting for. for you to
Maybe. I don't know.
you to go up there to climb
Yeah.
the ladder and to and shake their hands and say that. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
hopefully,
had I changed it after the 2 straight runs to the conference finals, it would be look kinda silly because then they
yeah.
missed
No,
and
it's
then
this
they
is a Stanley Cup. I feel like it's a Stanley Cup or
Oh, yeah.
you know.
I mean
I also, I mean, I do want to say because we mentioned it a little bit, but I saw someone tweet out like the Islanders have played, I believe, 57 playoff games or something between 29 the
mm,
2018-19 season and now, and uh, between 2008 and 2017 or something like that, they played like 25 or 40. I don't know what it was.
that's something right.
There was a
Yeah,
big gap, and
sure.
it's so funny to think that like every time the Islanders get into the playoffs, they're treated by the other people around the league as a the guest at at the party that nobody wants, and
Right.
I'm like, we've been here. Like this is we're now an established like playoff team. The Islanders
Right.
are a playoff team in this NHL era.
Yeah.
We hear Patrick Waugh always talk about like the mindset. We will talk about the mindset. We want to think about the mindset. Like this is a team that I think you could trust to stay pretty even keeled here after that game one performance because they've played so many game ones
Right. Yeah.
over the past 7 years or 6 years,
Mm.
and they've lost a lot of them. I think what the Penguins won,
Yeah.
they won, the Lightning won, but that those are and a couple in the bubble. But outside of that, like I don't really, they're
Yeah.
not like a team that wins game one. So I
Yeah.
think that it won't be a big deal.
They got their asses handed to them in game 1 against the Bruins. Remember that? That series looked like
Yes,
it was over
yes, I
before
know.
it
I was
started.
like, that was
That was
that was something.
That was
Yeah,
awful, yeah, and then
yeah,
they won that series, but, yeah, I mean, talk about things deserve and not deserve. The Islanders definitely don't deserve the "What are you doing here?" Treatment that they get all the time,
right.
every play because, like, dude, we've been here. Like, where have you been? Basically, is what I'm asking.
Yeah,
But there you go. Okay, real quick, one last thing. We talked in not the last episode, but the episode before about the Coyotes situation. That's now official. There's the Arizona Coyotes as a franchise are now inactive, and the team has moved to Utah. They're going to play out of Delta Center in Salt Lake City. They're going to have a new name, although I'll get to that in a second. They're Alex Morello, who still owns the Coyotes, franchise rights or whatever they call it, has 5 years now to get a new arena built in Arizona. And if he does, he'll get the team back, and we'll have Coyotes 2.0 at some point. And it's been a lot. There's a lot of videos out there and stuff. And I was speaking with listener Nick over Twitter, and he made the point that like Charles Wong was far from perfect, but like we never had to go through what the Coyotes fans have had to go through here. I mean, yes, you could look at it in such a way that like Barclays Center was kind of our mullet arena a little bit, basically, but the Islanders never left New York. They ended up getting a beautiful new arena at Belmont Park, and that's where they're going to be called home for a long, long time now. And Coyotes fans had no such luck. And this guy, I watched the Alex Morello press conference with Gary Bettman. It's very bizarre and off-putting. And the thing I keep coming back to, not just that, and the way that people are talking about the new owner in Utah, Ryan Smith, the other Ryan Smith, not Islanders, Weird Islanders Ryan Smith. Everything just comes off very tone deaf, and it's all very like everybody's focused on the wrong things. Like Morello is sitting there with Gary Bettman, and they're talking about all the stuff that they did, all the things that they tried, all of the opportunities they have to bring the Coyotes back, and how much they love the Valley and did this anything. Now, a single person seems to care all that much about the people who do care about this team and now have no team, right? That goes for like, oh, this guy's such a great owner. He wants to be in the NHL. It's so great that we have Utah. The NHL, of course, sent their water carrier in chief, Nick Kotzanicka, out there to talk about how wonderful it is. They're going to go to Utah and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay, but what about the people that are already here? It's like, it just comes off as very tone deaf. And another friend of mine, Laura Astorian, she used to run the Blues site, and she was a Thrashers fan too in Atlanta. And she's like, this is exactly the same playbook they pulled when they moved the Thrashers to Winnipeg. Like it's just like as if they didn't exist anymore. And it's so great that Winnipeg's back, and so we tried all this stuff and it didn't work. And it's like, yeah, but there are people here that care. So what do you have to say to them? And just all their answers were very, very tone deaf and weird. And everybody comes off looking like a con man. Like, and maybe they are, I don't know, but it's just very off putting. And I just kind of hate it. And I don't know. There are a lot of parallels between the Islanders played and the Coyotes played. And again, Wong and Morello, and I'm sure people from outside, certainly people outside of the Islanders bubble, see Wong as a big villain and a weirdo, and he was a weird dude. No, no issues there. But this is watching what they're going through makes me kind of thankful that we got it, what we got, and certainly I'm even more thankful for UBS Arena now. So, yeah. So Nick, we had a great conversation to talk about it, and he made me think about this all week now. And watching those press conferences and stuff just made me feel even worse for Coyotes fans and people that worked for the team that aren't going to. Now they're going to move the AHL team from Tucson to Mullet Arena for reasons that nobody seems to understand. Why would you do that? I don't know why you didn't stay in
They got to
Tucson.
keep the footprint. I'm like, what does that even mean?
I don't, I don't know. Footprint of what? I don't understand. Why? It's weird. I don't really get it. I mean, you were watching too. Like, what do you think of
Yeah.
all this?
Yeah, and I think Nick brought up a good point. It's something we kind of just missed on last week, which is that Charles Wong, he's got a complicated legacy. I think to so many people that don't know, like he
Mm,
just sounded like an absolute nut.
right.
Uh, to That was how people kind of just like summarized his tenure as the Islanders, but what they don't realize is that he was an owner, which is very rare in sports now. He was an owner who had roots in the place he was. He wasn't just some mercenary guy who like
Right.
was, either wanted to buy the team as like a vanity toy or like folks do with like a yacht. He was a guy who loved Long Island, and like his entire purpose of owning the Islanders was because they were the Islanders. Like they were the
Right.
team on Long Island where he was from, and he couldn't imagine a world where they left, and he did everything he could to keep them here, including some bizarre stuff. And um, never once was there a time where you're like, I don't know, like if I actually trust like his how genuine he's being here, right? He was genuine in both good and bad ways. Like he was genuine in talking about how like he's got to run the team on a shoestring budget, because he didn't want to keep losing money and have his hand forced to move them. But he was also genuine in that being the reason why he was running the team on a shoestring budget, was trying to keep the team here. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it was a good reminder from Nick, like that Wong, as uh absolutely bizarre as some of his ideas were, like he thank God it was him and not Alex Barillo. And I thought that I had no idea what this Ryan Smith guy looked like at
Yeah.
all. And then when I saw the picture of him, I was like, "This is exactly what I thought that this guy would look like." I'm like, "This is a guy who you can clearly see is totally okay with having like his face reconstructed to make himself look young and
Yeah. Very youth
whatever."
pastory. Very youth
Yes.
pastor
He
that
looked
comes
like
up.
the actor. There's an actor who came in like the Scrubs like reboot season. He's like in some other sitcoms,
Mm.
and it looks just like that guy. Or he looks like the Corey Monteith, the
Oh
actor
yeah, from
from
Glee.
Glee.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
does look like him.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
he passed away, Corey Monteith,
Yes, he
right?
did.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, him. But that guy,
yeah,
he looks just like him.
yeah.
So, and I hated the way he talked. He's like, we're trying to create a movement here. Shut up, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
you're not trying to like sell us an app in 2008.
Well, and that gets to the other thing I want to talk about, which is like they might not have a name at first because we want to get it right. They want to make
Right?
sure everything is right. What the are you talking about?
Yeah.
Every other team picks a name and then they just work around it. I don't understand. What they mean is that they want to run this through a million focus groups and a
Right.
million marketing companies and stuff like that. And then they want to come up with the blandest, most worthless name
Yeah.
ever
Which one
because
won't get us in trouble with
it won't,
with
right.
with
In-
the politicians here, the Mormons
right.
here,
Right.
the power brokers here, but also with the fans.
Right. So it's going to be named after some animal, right?
Right.
Like we already have a Panthers and we have a Bruins, so we can't pick that. Bears, like it'll be some animal or whatever that's indigenous to Utah. But that to me just drives me absolutely bonkers. Like
Yeah.
you're, and then our friend Jeff Merrick is like, well, this is just like with the PWHL. Okay, yeah, the PWHL did that, and it's also stupid. Like, I'm sorry, it's just stupid. I'm glad it's been a success. They're packing buildings. They packed the Bell Center. I hope that league exists forever, and it is a smashing success. But starting with no names is dumb. I'm sorry. How
Yeah.
much more successful they would be if they were the New York whatevers? Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like, it's just You know,
It's it it
we're
makes no sense to me.
no.
It makes none. Like, okay, and what do you and also, we need to get this right. We're gonna take time to get it right. You've been on about like, you've been it's not been a secret that Utah was getting a hockey team
Right.
for more than a year, like 18 months now.
Yeah.
So, you did it that just tells me uh,
Yeah.
you didn't do your due diligence, my friend, or something, or
Yeah.
you like you said, you're just afraid to do something, kind of unique and cool, and like
Yeah.
the Kachina jerseys, right?
Hmm.
Like that do
Yeah.
going out on a limb like that. So,
Dude, the NHL has a team named the Seattle Kraken. Like
yeah,
that's it's and we all thought that was a joke, and then they called themselves the Kraken, and we're like, this is actually kind of awesome. Like
yeah,
it's a great name. They took that bizarre name, which I'm sure there's a lot of old people out there like, what the heck is a Kraken? And they made it work, and they have the great logos, great colors, great presentation, great everything. Like I don't understand why you can't just do that. But that's the other thing too, real quick, is like Bettman kept talking in the Morello presser about like well, this was all done within the last month, and this all came together very quickly, and this was all rushed, so we can't make all these decisions too quickly. But Gary, you guys had 5 years to know that the Coyotes were going to move. Like, don't give me all this. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Smith wanted an expansion team. They sold him on the idea of buying the Coyotes instead and starting with the players that they have now. And I get that took some negotiating or whatever, but don't try and pretend like we didn't know that these Coyotes were going to move or something like this was going to happen. Don't I just don't understand like where he keeps coming off with this stuff. But
yeah,
it was very defensive as well. Like it's very off-putting. You can see it from the latest issue of 32 Thoughts on Sportsnet, but it's like 35 minutes long. I don't know. I watched the whole thing and I was just like, oh, this is really weirds me out. It's just very, very bothersome. But
mm,
anyway, again, we're here. It's not our problem anymore. Isn't that great? Not to sound callous, but I feel bad for the Coyotes fans and everything. But I'm also again thankful that that's not our problem anymore. Okay, let's wrap this up real quick. Sign up at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for bonus content and ad-free episodes. We have a huge week coming up over there. We're going to do our mailbag episode recording on Tuesday. So if you're a Country Club tier subscriber, you can start asking questions on Monday when that goes up. If you're not yet, sign up for the Country Club tier. You can ask us a question and listen to that episode. Depending on how many questions we get about this series and game one or game two, which will have been played by then, maybe I'll put out a free sampler again, but we'll see what happens. But that's going to record on Tuesday. On Thursday, we have our next episode of Country Club Atmosphere it's a groundbreaking episode. We have our first ever new member in the Country Club. And if you listen to our last episode of Anxiety, you know who it is. But trust me, this is a new thing. You're going to want to hear it. It's great. And then on Friday, we have a new episode of Weird Islanders featuring a very new, maybe our newest Weird Islander. And the two episodes, Country Club and Weird Islanders, make kind of bookends of a little bit of a music week, music themed couple of days, and you'll see more when they both come out. So check those both out. Country Club is obviously for Country Club tier subscribers at Patreon, and then Weird Islanders is for everybody. Follow us on Twitter at Isles Anxiety Pod. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible.com, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and YouTube Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme song is Morning Haze by Family Dinner. Listen to more of their music at Bandcamp and Spotify. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for your most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Learn more at fansfirstsports.com. Shop vintageIcehockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
the Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. Read and listen to his work at Action Network. Any final thoughts on Game 1 or upcoming Game 2 on Monday night?
Yeah, the Islanders they're in a weird spot here where you both want more of the same, but you also want none of the same in a different way. Like you want more of the same from the Islanders,
Yeah.
and less of the same from the hockey gods here. On The hockey gods are really becoming a theme down the stretch for us on this podcast, and I really would like them if they can just maybe take the day off on Monday, just let the chips fall as they may, perhaps,
Mhm.
rather than tilting the scales in the other way. While the Islanders have to do their bit too.
Mhm.
But you know what? It could be a lot worse. Like you said, like if the Islanders were run out of the building, we'd probably be sitting here talking about that there's probably only a few more days left of the season and
Mm.
kind of coming to grips with that. But right now, it feels like it's still a little more up in the air. and I'll take that. I would have taken that
Sure.
after what we've been through the season. So, like I said last week, like we've been through worse already this year. Maybe that's why it doesn't seem so daunting. Coming back from a 1-0 hole against the Stanley Cup favorites, after they played a pretty shoddy game. The Islanders were pretty good, but it's probably like I said, it's because we've been through like so much worse
Yeah.
than what we saw on Saturday. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully by the time we talk next, it's a little bit more you know more good news than just moral victories.
Sure. Yeah, it'd be nice to not have to battle the Hurricanes, the refs, and the hockey gods all in the same game in the
Yes.
playoffs, which is all we've ever done apparently now for 11 straight games over the last 5 years or so. So we will be back. We're gonna the schedule for the rest of the series is gonna be kind of up in the air. Again, we're gonna talk for the mailbag after game 2, and then we'll have to see where we're at. If anything, we'll be back next Sunday after game 4. Okay. But we will talk to you again very shortly. And thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.